Hello again everybody, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. Today we are in Entebbe in Central Africa, checking out the new cows DA40-XLS for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So here we are on the stands at the GA section of Entebbe, and cold and dark in the beautiful Diamond Star. Cows have created the DA42 previously, which is pretty good. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, and it's compatible with this and also MSFS 2020 for those of you who might not be sure which one it works on. And it's priced at £25, or about, well, almost 50 Australian dollars. And is available via Orbex, the links for which will be in the description below. Cows have created the DA42 previously, and we saw from that product how much detail they put into these aeroplanes, and the DA40 is no different. It's been purposely tailored and coded to work pretty much like the real thing. So they say that they've got a pinpoint accurate flight model, complex system depth, amazing auditory and visual models that we come to expect from the cows team, and we're going to take it for a little spin around this rather scenic part of Africa. So as we can see, all the doors are openable. The flight deck environment here looks superb. The level of detail and modelling that they've done here is very nice, and because it's a very realistic simulation of the real thing, the circuit breakers are poppable, the electrical systems, all of that sort of stuff is modelled and simulated, and there's the good old cows logo on those rather posh leather seats. Inside has got some really good textures. We've got the old fire extinguisher down there, and we've got the flight manual whacked onto the back seat. Aircraft's controlled by a centre stick between the legs. We've got throttle prop and mixture in the centre, and we've also got things like the parking brake release lock and everything all in the middle pedestal as well. Beautiful Garmin G1000 cockpit, we're going to make use of that as well. Superb bit of kit in modern aviation, and I'm just going to take it round for a little spin just to see what we think of this aeroplane. Now, before we get into it, we'll go through some of the differences between the MSFS 2024 version, which we're in today, and the 2020 version. Currently, this doesn't have any walk-around features, but they are planned to be released in the future. And the standby instruments in this aeroplane react differently to the standard MSFS instruments as well, so they might differ by a little, a few percentage points. And because MSFS 2024 handles internal calculations differently and slightly quicker, I think, from what I gather, it also might change some of the behaviours and timings between some clicks and system changes, whatever it might be. It's also worth saying that in the pilot operating handbook, which is provided as documentation for this add-on, there are also some variances applied to the engine as well, so that every single one of us gets a unique experience in MSFS 2024. So fuel flow per injector can differ between plus or minus 5%, cylinder cooling plus or minus 7.5%, peak EGT delta plus or minus 1%, for example. Magneto timing as well can be slightly different. Idle throttle settings, peak RPM can differ by plus or minus 10, and low RPM as well, plus or minus 10 difference there as well. So every aircraft feels unique. Fuel pressure, oil cooling, they all are slightly different based on you using it in your simulator, which is pretty superb actually, to be fair. It sounds remarkably good. There are failures included in this as well, but for that you have to enable engine damage. We're not going to kind of dive into that too much today. And for what it's worth, I'm not a DA40 pilot, so there is likely going to be a couple of mistakes here and there as I start the aeroplane up. Please do forgive me for that. Don't have a go at me at the comments. In lieu of kind of familiarity with the aeroplane, it's very difficult to learn in sort of one flight. But we'll make the most of it. Okay, engine start sequence. Just gauge that, set the new QNH. And by the way, if you want to use checklists for this, there is a link in the Pilot's Operating Handbook, I think it's at the bottom, that will take you to the Diamond website, and that's where you will be able to kind of download their official checklists for the aeroplane. If I just move away from the aeroplane slightly here, now we've got the engine started, you can just see that it's alive a little bit. There's a little bit of wobble going on the wings as the engine kind of just buffets the airframe around on its wheels. And that's really nice to see, because it is almost as if you can actually physically see that the movement of air from around the prop and the aeroplane itself is actually simulated. So within the G1000 cockpit you can have a look at the checklists here, and you've also got a digitised checklist, which is pretty cool. And we can just work through all of that depending on what it is. So that's the emergency checklist, for example. We've got engine displays, and we can change various elements of that. And in the menu here on the right hand side, that's where you can change state saving, failures, engine damage, realistic part break, all of that sort of stuff, depending on what sort of simulation you want for your own aeroplane. It's really quite cool. Navigraph is also supported, and with that, once you sync your Navigraph Ultimate account, you'll be able to load in the airport diagrams, have a look at all the different charts, and also have your aeroplane overlay there displayed, which is mega cool. Flap heavers down here, we want to make sure we've got full travel of that, so we'll extend them to full first, then set them to takeoff, which is usually 1 notch. Altimeters are set, there we go, yeah, takeoff. Animation wise, for the control surfaces, you can see here, actually if we go really close you can see that trim tab working away, which is really cool. Rudders, really nice detailing on this. By the way, also the panels sort of slightly shake, so we'll hopefully see that in a short while. In the G1000, won't go into it, but you can set all your transponder codes and all that sort of stuff as well. You can pop it on, out, standby, etc. You can configure all your flight plans in here as well. What we'll do is we shall release the parking brake, and we will work our way out towards the runway. Log on taxi, just because of the pretty severe crosswind on the other runway. So we've worked our way all the way down to runway 17. Tiny little bit of backtrack as well on 20. And we've done all of our pre-flight checks as well. So parking brake is off at the moment. Seatbelts fastened. Adjustable backrests upright. Rear door closed and latched. We've checked the front canopy closed and latched door. Warning light is off. Circuit breakers checked. Elevator electric trim is set to take off. Flaps check takeoff. Flight controls we've already checked. Power lever will be set to idle after lineup anyway. And engine instruments are all in the green. One thing is worth noting here is I find taxi very difficult. So at the minute I've got like rudder steering and things, but it doesn't actually do anything. So you have to use differential braking. Thankfully, because I've got a set of actual rudder pedals, I'm able to literally use differential braking for steering, which makes things a bit easier. Where are we now? So Peter heat's on, transponder is already on alt, fuel pump's on, MFD and EIS is set to default, so we've got our charts on the right. Landing lights on, approach sector is clear, we're looking into that now. And the runway lineup is here, and it is runway 0.17. I love the bounciness of this on the ground, it's quite cool. I remember years ago when I was last flying PA-28s, it'd bob about like this on the ground. It's nice to see this in an aeroplane here as well. So we'll get the brakes off. Tiny little bit of stick into wind because we've still got a bit of a crosswind. And we'll set power. Speed's alive. Engine T's and P's are in the green. RPM's top of the yellow band. Starting to get that rudder authority now, which is very nice. 60 knots. Let's just bring that nose up. Fixed gear, so there's no gear to retract. And we can close that to isolate the noise. Just let that nose come down a little bit. We work to fly the extended centre line. And for a single engine prop, this is a pretty quick aeroplane. It's nice and aerodynamic. You can see there in the yellow band, we end the white band at 90 knots. It's a pretty quick aircraft. Going to bring that prop RPM down a little bit. Get us in the green. And I'll work to set the electric elevator trim to roughly level. If you're flying around in particularly cold climates, it's not really the case here today, but if we were flying around and it was very cold, then the oil temperature, for example, being everything simulated in this, it can take about 20 minutes to warm up in those colder climates. So to solve that, you can increase the engine RPM to decrease the warm-up time. But ideally as well with it, you would position the aircraft into wind and monitor all of those instruments as you warm her up. There is an ability, if you are struggling to taxi like I was, you can apparently swap the nose wheel from castering to steerable, but I'm not sure how to do that because it's not actually in kind of the configurable options in the autopilot system. So I'm not quite sure, and there's nothing in the manual that I can see that actually tells me how to do it either. We're going to just reset the trim to takeoff trim, so it's nearer to neutral. Pop the RPM up a little bit, and I'm just going to show you guys its stall behaviour as well. So we can either do full flap stalls, or you can do clean stalls. We'll just do a clean stall for today. With that, aileron controls limited, and the wings as well have to be kept level by using the rudder. If we put too much aileron in, we might get a wing drop, which is not really what we want, of course. I'm just going to steer over the water here a little bit as well, just fly us around a little bit. And I'm just using a bit of speed and power to get us an extra 1,000 foot of altitude, right in the white line there on the speed take. Okay, so just getting us wings level, and we've got a nice altitude ahead of us as well. So what I'm going to do is keep it clean, and I'll bring those throttles to idle. We'll maintain 7.5 degrees nose up roughly, and as we lose power, lose speed, we're going to have to obviously increase that elevator pressure. We should hear a stall warner shortly. There it is. Almost all the way back. Now I'm all the way back on the elevator. And we can release that. It flies it really nicely actually, it's quite forgiving. And we can get that power set back up nice and high. And just gently recover from that stall. If you had flaps extended for like a full flap stall as well, the stall angle is massively reduced, so the stall angle of attack is massively reduced. So you can still have a form of elevator or aileron control throughout that as well. So now we're a bit higher as well. I'm going to attempt an in-flight engine restart just to simulate an engine failure. If you've got things like failures enabled or engine kind of stress damage and things, you might end up losing the engine. If you've got stress damage, you might not be able to restart that naturally, so you'll be gliding it down to the ground. But if you've had some sort of failure resulting in an engine shutdown in flight, whatever that might be, I don't know, the mixture drops to lean or something and can't sustain the fuel flow it needs, whatever it might be, then we can basically run through an engine in flight restart. We'll probably lose about 1,000 foot loss, but then as I'm going through this and chatting about it and showing it, I'll probably end up losing a bit more than that, to be fair. So we'll get the fuel pump off, and we're going to idle the throttles, pull the mixture back, and then we're going to hold altitude until the engine stops windmilling. Once we've done that, we're going to then dive to 20 degrees nose down pitch until the engine starts to windmill itself again. Maximum airspeed for this is 130 knots. We'll then level off and advance the mixture until the engine restarts itself. So let's do that. Throttles to idle. Mixture's full lean. There goes the engine there. Look at the displays. Just holding it on the elevator. And we're going to now look to 20 degrees. We want to be fairly snappy for this. Here we go. You can see that engine now starting to already work to windmill. It's a bit bumpy here, so it's a bit difficult for me to hold 20. Windmilling. Mixture. Yeah, baby! That was epic. Almost hit that 130 knots or so then, didn't we? You can do like performance maneuvers in this as well, so you can buzz around and do sort of power on stalls, power off stalls. You could do some aerobatics as well if you wanted to. You could do super slow flight, steep turns, and lots of different types of landings as well. There she is, looking pretty good. Sounds outside are quite nice as well. And being as though we're in a bit of a choppy location at the moment, it has been a really impressive aeroplane to fly. So descent approach check then, landing data received, altimeters are set, we're still on the local area. Comms not really required for today, although we'd set that if we're flying on VATSIM for example, or trying to tune in VORs. Seatbelts fastened, adjustable backrests upright, fuel transfer as required. We'll get her on the right tank because we've been buzzing around on the left one for a little while. Fuel pumps on, landing lights on, parking brake check released, it is. Just positioning ourselves for a bit of a tighter downwind as well. It's a really nice part of Africa to fly around actually. Just working to rejoin the circuit here. Entering the end of the, well, the beginning of the downwind leg. And working to be about 1,000 foot above. I'm going to try, he says, a power off 180 accuracy landing. One of the things you can do in this. So once we're beam the touchdown point on downwinds, we're going to reduce power to idle, and then we're going to begin a turn slowly towards the runway, and then we're going to set flaps as required. So it's going to be takeoff flaps during base turn. We've got to have to judge our distance to glide the aeroplane, ensuring we're well above the pappies throughout, because height is what we need. So we power off for landing. And then when we're on final, we'll extend flaps to the full flap sort of setting for approach. That's going to then adversely increase the amount of drag on the aircraft. So with that, we can end up getting ourselves in a bit of a tight spot. And finding ourselves a bit too low and slow. And we're going to have to try and glide her down. You can do short field landings on this as well, so we can fly an approach at 62 knots. at the touchdown point, crossing that speed, and then extending those full flaps by within 2 nautical miles of the runway. And then we can half the engine power, glider down, and then fly low until touchdown, basically, with a little bit of flare and brakes. Flaps up and maximal braking when we're on the ground for short field landings, but we're not doing that today. There's the touchdown point. Quite choppy conditions here as well, and as we begin the turn, we've got the big tailwind with a big headwind that's going to push us down towards the water away from the runway as well, which is something we've got to contend with there. So, idle, begin the 2-degree turn. Setting takeoff flaps. Still got 4 white on the pappies. Keeping her coming round. Full flap. There's the stall warning. Touchdown. Bit messy, but you can do it. Just set takeoff flaps. And we go again. .60 knots. Really good fun this. We can do a whole load of different things, which is quite nice. The detailing is superb, as we've seen. And the level of simulation, the depth to the simulation from the Cows team in this is, as we come to expect, really quite superb. So give it a go. Let us know what you think in the comments section down below as well. Hit like, hit subscribe. The links for this are in the description if you want to go and get your hands on it. As a reminder, it's £25, British pounds, thereabouts, or 60 Aussie didgeridoos. But I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for watching.